Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest today is writer, researcher, voiceover artist, and podcast host Miguel Conner. I'll be talking with him about his groundbreaking book, The Occult Elvis, The Mystical and Magical Life of the King. Miguel Conner, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, is often remembered as a devout conservative Southerner. Less known is that he was also a devout mystic, occultist, and shaman whose life was steeped in esoteric traditions, and it all began with the unusual circumstances of his birth. What, Miguel, was that?
It was very unusual. Straight out of the gate, it seemed destiny or higher forces were there to shape Elvis's life. It can start with his birth was very hard. They had to have the birth at the parents' house, Elvis and Vernon and Gladys's house. They couldn't afford a hospital. Some stories say that they couldn't even afford a midwife. And she was in labor, and the dad, Vernon, went outside to have a cigarette, and lo and behold, a blue light appeared over the house. Whether this is a heralding by the gods, as happens with many lauded figures, whether it's Jesus or Julius Caesar or Buddha, or was it some alien mothership dropping off the latest star savior? I don't know, but Vernon was outside. He saw this blue light cover on top of the house. It froze the wind. The sound of the coyotes vanished, and he freaked out and dropped his cigarette, ran inside. And he didn't tell Elvis this until many, many years later. Why? Because tragically, Elvis's twin Jesse was stillborn when he came out, and then Elvis came out 35 minutes later. So these two events really were an omen because Elvis losing his twin became a driving force all of his life. It's called the twinless survivor syndrome. An individual always feels they've lost something, something is missing. They're born with guilt survivor disorder. They seek the bigger questions in life, like why did he die and I didn't? We had the same birth. Why did I grow up poor and couldn't take my mother couldn't go to the hospital? And they are seekers, but they also tend to be workaholics, self-destructive, prone to addiction, and it's hard for them to have connections with human beings. And Jesse became sort of his higher self or conscious or daemon, spoke to him through dreams and visions, was always a gut feeling that drove him. And the idea of Jesse really haunted him and inspired him till the day Elvis had to go back to the mothership, if you know what I mean.
For your book, Miguel, you draw on firsthand accounts from Priscilla Presley, close friends, family, spiritual advisors, and the Memphis Mafia, the nickname given by the media to the entourage who protected Elvis pretty much for his entire life. How easy or difficult was it to get them to open up about the esoteric occult Elvis?
The process was actually easy because I didn't directly connect them. As I like to say, this is a secret hidden in plain sight. You and I obviously know the tabloid stories of Elvis in the 80s, 90s. And today, of course, there's plenty of YouTube and podcasts with Elvis conspiracies, crazy stories about the king. But I went directly to the horse's mouth. I went to all these biographies, whether it's Priscilla's biography or Sonny West, all the figures and his spiritual teacher, Larry Geller. And I saw it was all there. But, one book had a section about Elvis and UFOs. Another book had a section about Elvis healing. And Ginger Alden's biography had a section about him being able to manipulate the weather and create force fields. And another book talked about his interests in the occult for many years of his life. So it was all spread out. And there was also some newer newspaper articles, and I just brought it all together. And again, this is not tabloid. This is people who they're reliable for the most part. There are biographies that are still in print, have sold millions of copies. Even some of the sources are from very good historians. It's all this. And most of my stories, 95%, he was never alone. They are eyewitnesses. He was with the Memphis Mafia or with Priscilla or with his Larry Geller. So I just brought it all together, and that's the book. And the depth is incredible. They are things I still couldn't put in the book, and things I'm learning about Elvis. He truly was an unbelievable mystic, magician, and shaman.
You just mentioned one of his spiritual advisors, Larry Geller. Who were some of the other key teachers who influenced Elvis on his mystical, esoteric journey?
He had a few. I mean, we can start with his mother, Gladys. Elvis talks about how Gladys and him could astral travel, and he sort of taught him at a young age how to travel the planets and the moon, leave his body. Faith healing was an important part of Elvis's life, and he was a very powerful and effective healer, from broken legs to heart attacks to hangovers. Elvis could heal at a touch for the most part. Later on, yes, Larry Geller was the main one when he met him in the 60s and Elvis was doing movies. He was disillusioned by his celebrity life. The money was empty, or, all the riches was empty. He still wasn't getting the questions of why Jesse died. And at that time, Gladys had passed, and he was still wondering, what is my purpose? Is this more? So he met Larry, and Larry really sent him on a rabbit hole of mystical wonder. You also have to include Dayamata, who was Yogananda's successor. He met her at Yogananda's ashram outside of LA, and she became a very powerful and important guide for several years for Elvis. That's really it. He tried to meet Manly P. Hall once. Manly P. Hall gave him a signed book of the secret teachings of the ages, but they weren't able to connect. Several martial art teachers also guided Elvis. I would say those are the main influences.
Can you, Miguel, tell me about Elvis's UFO encounters and their significance?
Elvis was always ahead of the curve. Even his mystical ideas were before the hippies, before the 60s awakening. In the United States, there wasn't much. The Beat Writers, the Theosophical Society, New Agers in the West and East Coast, but same with UFOs. He was already studying them from various sources. He was speculating on ideas from the ancient alien to the fact that the aliens were stopping humanity from destroying itself. He did have experiences, and I detail a few, I think three that are relevant. He had one in Graceland with his father Vernon, the lights covering the area, and Vernon suddenly remembering the blue light and explaining it to Elvis, and Elvis being, oh my God, there is some purpose and destiny in this. While driving from Memphis to LA, there was a time in the 60s where Elvis just wouldn't fly. In the Arizona desert, they saw this formation of lights that were doing things that they knew even no U.S. Army or Russian ships could do. It couldn't even be experimental craft, but they flooded the night sky and disappeared. He was with Larry Geller and the Memphis Mafia, and then another one in his Bel Air home in L.A. when he was out with Sonny West, just, enjoying the backyard, getting some fresh air, and a light flooded the area again. And at first they thought, well, maybe it's a helicopter or a plane. And then they were like, oh my God, it's, not making a sound. It's the lights getting closer and covering the trees and flooding the area with illumination. Elvis told Sonny, go inside and get my friend. I think it was Jerry Schilling. And they came out and Elvis was gone. And they're like, oh no, we had one job and these aliens have abducted our boss. So they ran around, the light starting, the UFO craft is starting to leave, and suddenly they hear Elvis, I'm over here. And he's in the neighbor's yard, sort of looking at the sky and that. And many discussions about aliens and UFOs happened through this.
You previously mentioned about Elvis's astral traveling abilities. What, Miguel, can you tell me about his psychic and telepathic abilities?
He became interested in telepathy by reading Theosophy and becoming really devoted to Madame Blavatsky's teachings. But as many people say, from record producers to friends, he had the ability, as they say, to read the room. People say he knew what they felt before they even felt it. So he could understand people and really read them. And he practiced sometimes techniques of mind control, but usually one time when he was just very angry and he'd taken too many pills and he was angry because he'd found out there was an assassination attempt on him on stage, and he thought Priscilla's lover had hired these goons, and he tried to control his bodyguards, but he sort of backed out because one thing Elvis learned from Yogananda and all these other spiritual teachers is don't use this for egoic reasons, if you know what I mean. So he kind of kept it to himself, and he certainly had many very powerful dreams. He had mystic experiences and even predicted his death very closely, pretty much to the day. His mind was always in different places. People say he could go outside into the yard and just go into the Zen sort of state and just sit outside in his yard in Graceland for hours, just contemplating the universe and traveling to different places. A lot of case studies and examples with Elvis.
Elvis's efforts as a natural healer is examined in the occult Elvis. Could you, Miguel, expand on that?
He learned it from his parents. There's a story when he was a kid, he had tonsillitis, and Gladys and Vernon took him to the doctor. He had a high fever, and the doctor's like, there's nothing I can do. Remember, this is the Great Depression in the 30s. It was not a good time if you were in the South, regardless of what race you were or where you were. It was a very hard time. They prayed that morning in a very Pentecostal type prayer, and Elvis's fever and tonsillitis disappeared. So he believed in that. Later, when he mixed his Pentecostal Christianity with more New Age techniques, he began to expand. Priscilla herself says that he could heal her headaches at a touch. He cured his grandmother, Minnie May, of her arthritis. He could take away hangovers when people were nauseated, back pains. He helped cure a friend who was in the hospital who had had a motorcycle accident of his back pain. But then some were very extreme. There's a story of Elvis is driving in his limo and he sees a bus over the curve of the sidewalk, and the driver is staggering in the street, grabbing his chest, obviously having a heart attack. And Elvis runs out and puts his hands on him. And he would always summon this blue light. This blue light gave him powers, and he learned from Larry Geller how to channel them. And suddenly the driver's like, oh my God, my heart attack is gone. There's another instance where he cured a broken leg. They were out in Colorado snowboarding. Poor fellow hits a pole, breaks his leg, and Elvis puts his hand on his legs, again, does his ritual. The leg is healed. So many other instances of Elvis just doing incredible feats. There was a backup singer from his band, the Sweet Sensations, I believe. And she was crying in the room. They were in Vegas. She was crying in the one of the rooms, and the other singers are comforting her. And Elvis goes and is like, "What's going on?" And the singer says, "Oh, I just went to the doctor. I have really serious stomach cancer." And Elvis gets the rest of the singers around her. They do a prayer circle, and she goes to the doctor next week, and the stomach cancer is cured. And the book offers many other examples.
In what ways, Miguel, did Elvis's vast knowledge and connection to the occult esoteric world influence his life and music?
I would say it was very important. I would say his spirituality was up there with his music career. I mean, it really drove him. He wanted to know the bigger questions of life, again, even beyond Jesse. What is the nature of God? What is my role in the world? He believed in the idea of ascended masters, and he read Albert Pike and the Freemasons. So he thought individuals like Jesus and Zoroaster and Moses and Mohammed and Buddha were all these awakened individuals, and he very humbly hoped that he could be one of those. If he kept practicing his meditation and yoga and prayer, he could become that high, and he could help heal the world. Now, and he was very humble. He never mixed his music very much with his spirituality, although he did. But until he got the orders or became truly awakened, he was still going to be Elvis the rock star. Although there are reports of him doing like Buddhist prayers in his Vegas show, stopping and doing some. Obviously, his manifestation in his Vegas outfit is very occult. The idea of the Aztec calendars and the Egyptian motifs and wearing an Egyptian ankh pretty openly and all that was very magical, almost shamanistic. But to Elvis, he always said that his favorite music was gospel. He once said, I know every religious song ever written. So for Elvis, it was always tapping into the essence and ethos of those individuals who were seeking God, who were coming from backgrounds of being sharecroppers or slaves and going into that energy, making it his own and bringing it out to the public. He only sang two social songs, as you probably know, If I Can Dream and In the Ghetto. That was it.
It's now many years since the announcer at an Elvis Presley concert would say at its conclusion, Elvis has left the building. However, according to numerous eyewitness accounts, Elvis, at least his spirit, has never left the earth plane, and he has been seen in the theaters he performed at and the restaurants he frequented. What, Miguel, has your research discovered about this phenomenon? And by any chance, did you have the opportunity to speak with those who were close to Elvis when he was alive about what they think about these reported sightings of Elvis?
I was called by this voice to write this book. I was never an Elvis fan. I was always a Beatles person, as I like to say. But this voice called me to write this book, and I'd never written a biography. So when I started it, I'm sure these individuals like, who's this guy? Everybody, my family, friends thought I was maybe a bit crazy for doing this, but I had to do it, and the book came out. So I hope now I'll have more leverage to be able to talk one-on-one with individuals. Without a doubt, Elvis has become a living myth, and by a myth, I don't mean like a fable, but a power, a cosmic power. As Joseph Campbell said, myth is the language of the spirit and it can manifest in the world. Carl Jung believed that. So I think the spirit of Elvis and the fact he's become a living myth we project into causes him to appear. I think he has an important message for us. And that is what is to be an American, what is to be spiritual, and that each one of us has a sacred mission. And he has been appearing a lot. He appears in dreams. If you go to the Graceland website, they have a page where people can write their Elvis sightings. And he's appeared in so many places. And I think he will continue to appear to different people in different places. I think his popularity is actually surging again.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yakker want to buy the Occult Elvis, the mystical and magic life of the king, learn about other books you've authored, and your podcast, how, Miguel, can they do that?
They certainly read it as a friend told me when he read the book. It doesn't feel like a book, it feels like a seance. It's like you're summoning Elvis in front of you and he's telling you, this is a story the world keeps missing, and I want the world to see this other dimension of me for myself and for the benefit of humanity. But to find more about my work, it's actually very easy. It's my name, miguelconner.com. So they can go there, and there's links to the book. There's links to my blog because I'm, again, finding out so much more about Elvis and speculating on other ideas. There's a link to my two podcasts. I have another podcast. This one is more focused instead of Gnosticism and Hermeticism and mystical. This is focused more on culture, rock music, and try to bring and talk about Elvis as much as possible. So yeah, miguelconner.com is the way to go.
Miguel Conner, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yakker. I very much enjoyed yakking with you about Elvis, the most successful solo artist in history, who I now know because of your book was not just the king of rock and roll, but king of the mystics.
Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow of Paranormal Yakker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.